For so long, we've had to sit back and wonder who on earth is going to get injured this week. Well, now we're kind of wondering who on earth this week is going to return from injury. What a nice turn of events. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is indeed the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for tuning in and making this a part of your morning routines. It is greatly appreciated. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. And thank you as always for listening and for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated. And we're going to do our absolute best to cover as many topics as possible today. We've got quite a lot to get through as well. And apologies, there was no show as usual yesterday. There was an early morning press conference and I couldn't find the time to get a pre-recorded episode done. So after I had a morning on Wednesday of basically saying, I'm back, and then I wasn't. So you'll be good to know that I'll be back tomorrow morning, of course, to do a reaction to today's game this afternoon as Arsenal host, Sunderland host Arsenal at the Stadium of Light. And then it'll kind of be the normal scheduled programming through the international break. But there will be no shows, of course, on the Saturday and Sunday because we don't do shows during the international break on Saturdays and Sundays. So bear that in mind as well. But other than that, we're going to be back. We're going to be usual programming. So get used to me being on your screens again in the mornings. Good morning to you joining us in the chats. Really appreciate your time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Yanis and Sid and John. We've got Ocean and Runs with Cows. We've got Blackshine and Paul and Maximius. We've got Matthew and Sir Nicholas and Steve and Tabani and Mike and John and Arta. We've got Martin and Blackshine and Barry and Tom and Zoom and Kirill and plenty more of you guys and girls too. Thank you so much as always for tuning in. Really greatly appreciate you being here and listening. So let's go through today's stories, shall we? We begin with yesterday's under-21s who were held to a 1-1 draw with Southampton. Charles Sago Jr. On the score sheet scored a pretty good goal. From the sounds of things, cutting in from the left-hand side and striking right-footed effort into the back of the Southampton net, but unfortunately unable to get the results that they would have been hoping for with a victory. And Southampton are, to be fair, top currently of the PL2 table, so that's probably worth highlighting in this regard. But Arsenal would have hoped for perhaps a better result when it came to this particular game. And Arsenal's youth side has had a few struggles, it's probably fair to say, especially in the youth league, continue to be beaten relatively regularly. I think that's and AFC Matt in the chat saying that 16-year-old Karen Thompson and Josiah King made their under-21 debuts as well. So more positive news for the youth team, especially for those more locked in on that front, as clearly Matt appears to be. Moving into some transfer news, actually. And Arsenal have been linked with a brand new player. A Danish midfielder called Silas Andersen has been linked with the club and has actually been asked directly by the press about those links. And he says, I don't know. I'll leave it to my agent to work on the matter. I don't know much. Arsenal is a big club. I'd be happy. The transfer in January, there's a lot of interest. Now it's up to everyone to make a move, but we'll see. It's something I need to talk about with my agent and the team sporting director. I'm aiming to achieve the highest possible level. That's my goal. And yes, I feel like I've shown myself and what I can do. And I think I am ready, but we will see. So Silas Andersen is a kind of defensive midfielder, Danish youth international player who's made his kind of mark up to under 20s level with Denmark. And he currently plays his trade with Hacks in the Swedish top division and has made so far this season 35 appearances already across all competitions. Of course, those calendar year seasons run slightly differently in Scandinavian nations, but currently playing also in the UEFA Conference League, where Hacks are also involved, and has played some, or maybe it was last season, but has played in that competition, played in European competitions with them, and has been involved, of course, as I mentioned, with the Danish under-20s side as well. It could be that he could be seen as kind of a long-term replacement for Christian Norgard, Norgard as well joined Arsenal in the summer. Only this summer, just gone for around 10, 12 million pounds. But he is seen, of course, as kind of an experienced figure, a depth option in that role. And it might be that Arsenal are keen to kind of find already a long-term replacement for him when Norgard's time with the club, which is only a short contract, eventually does come to a close. So January transfer to Arsenal, I don't know if that's likely, nor do I know if the move is likely in general, just because A, I've not heard anything, and B, also with Zubimendi at the age that he is, maybe a player like Andersen would want more guarantees over game time in a defensive midfield position. So there's also that to consider as well. But yes, this link to the Danish midfielder is there, and he's actually been asked directly on it, which is why we addressed it with the quotes this morning. Now, of course, not being here yesterday, I wasn't able to react to the sights of Gabriel Jesus returning to the Arsenal squad in what is obviously a great sight to behold, and to see the Brazilian centre-forward back on the training field. If you'd have said to me that of him, Martinelli, Gyökeres, Ødegaard, Madueke, Havertz, who will be the first one we see kind of training with the team again, I didn't think it would have been Gabriel Jesus. In fact, it seems like he might be slightly ahead of schedule when it comes to his return. Now, I don't think it's likely that we'll see him in the squad today, although, never say never, but I think it'd be very unlikely if he was involved. He's only had a couple of training sessions, maybe 3 or 4 now with the Arsenal first team, but being back in the squad is obviously a very, very positive sign indeed. Now, I was at Mikel Arteta's press conference yesterday, and we're going to go through a lot more of that press conference, of course, as well. But I had the opportunity to ask Mikel Arteta about that situation and about Gabriel Jesus returning to the squad. And, of course, he provided some updates on the matter as well. I'm just frantically now trying to find where I've actually managed to save that. I'll have to go and see. So if you want to read the full transcript, of course, you can do so on the football.london website, and you can read the full transcript there. But he says, I don't know in terms of his return. It's now making the steps day by day in a different surrounding. Obviously, he's been doing everything on his own now. He's got players around him, very competitive players around him, and see how he copes with that. But he's full of energy. I love the reaction of his teammates when he first joined us. And yeah, it's great to have him back. Now, I kind of seeing Jesus back was kind of wanting to ask a few more questions on the matter of Gabriel Jesus and what he's going to bring. And first of all, with Kai and Victor being at the club, what different traits is Jesus going to add to the squad? And he said, well, again, he's a player that's very unpredictable, full of energy, super competitive, a player that comes from a context of difficulty in the last few seasons for a variety of nasty injuries. So the level of hunger and desire that he's going to bring to the team is going to be amazing. So I'm thrilled to have him. I think he's going to add something extra to the team that we don't have, and make sure that very soon we see him on the pitch making an impact for the team. Very soon was the word that he used. And I asked then, of course, with having signed Victor Gyökeres and having Kai Havertz at the club, and maybe the likes of Andrea Harriman and Noose coming through, does he see longevity with Gabriel Jesus in the group, having now added the likes of Victor Gyökeres to the system? And he said, yes, because we haven't had them, and now we don't have Victor, and we haven't had Kai for 3 months or many forwards. And unfortunately, that's becoming something that consistently is happening. So we need those options, and what an option to have with Gab. So he didn't really kind of commit to the idea of him being a player that could extend, or stay at Arsenal beyond the forthcoming windows, but is seemingly very committed to kind of reintegrating Gabby Jesus back into the squad. He has to be one of the most enigmatic players, I think, over the last 3-4 years that he has been at Arsenal, because he joined the club with such a hype around him, and he began with Arsenal so incredibly well. And then, of course, injuries have kind of taken hold and stunted that impact that he was having. I remember having games with the Chelsea game. We won 1-0 at Stamford Bridge, and Gabriel Magalhaes scored a header. Had an unbelievable game in that fixture at Stamford Bridge. And I thought in that moment, this guy's going to be Arsenal centre forward for the foreseeable future. I remember games, of course, where he scored the goal against Leicester at home, that lovely kind of curled effort into the top right-hand corner, the goal that he scored at Bournemouth. The performance of Bournemouth overall was also brilliant. I remember just last season when he scored a hat-trick at Crystal Palace. It really is he is an enigma at Arsenal because we've never really been able to see what he's been able to give Arsenal over a long period of time because there's always been an injury. He does offer Arsenal something different. He is a different type of profile to the other forwards that we have in the team, and that's going to be very, very interesting indeed to see, in the end, what he is able to offer. But the question now is, who could the mystery returner for Sunderland be, if any? And the reason why we're asking this question, of course, does lead more into Mikel Arteta's press conference from yesterday. Because when he was asked about injuries, he turned around and said, first of all, no news, remains the same, and nobody new that can join the squad, so all the same. So he first of all said that. Right. So bear that in mind. He said, no news, remains the same. That nobody new can join the squad. So all the same. Now, join the squad could intimate he means that joins the squad that have been playing, but he could mean join the squad from, who knows, maybe training sessions. So he was then asked about confirming then Odegaard, Havertz, Madueke, Gyökeres, and Martinelli not available. He says, I cannot confirm all of that, but you are not far. Odegaard, Havertz, Madueke, Gyökeres, Martinelli. Are they not available tomorrow? He says, I cannot confirm all of that, but you are not far. Now, he was later then asked a little bit further on this topic by Simon Collins from the Standard, of which he says, you might have one of those kind of like, it sounded like you're hopeful you might have one of those 5 back tomorrow. Is that correct? And he said, when? And he said, you might have one of those 5, Gabby, Kai, Martin, Victor. He says, no, I didn't say that. Let's see what happens in the next week. I don't want to give too much away. So, are we going to see one of Gyökeres, Martinelli, Noni, Martin, or Kai back in the Arsenal squad today? I don't think so. I could be proven wrong. I don't think we're going to see them. But I think there is a good chance that we might see them back, at least a fair few of them back, after the international break. And potentially, of course, therefore, for the North London derby. And it would be great, of course, to see if we could get those players back as well. He was asked another question about Kai Havertz, and he said, let's see how he absorbs the load first when he starts to train with us. And when he's done that, obviously it's not therefore going to be Kai. He kind of confirms there he's not been training. Obviously, we're going to have to be, especially in the first few weeks, with an eye on him to manage the amount of minutes when we do play him. But yeah, when you look at his record, when you look at what he's done in his career, he's played every single game. He's never been injured. And now we have this issue with his knee that will be resolved, hopefully, and he'll be back to his best. Now, the other news from the press conference in particular was the news that Miles Lewis-Skelly has been left out of the latest England squad. All the other usual suspects, of course, are there with Saka, Nezza and Rice, but Miles Lewis-Skelly is not there. Now, in a previous press conference, Thomas Tuchel had confirmed that if Miles Lewis-Skelly didn't play more games, of course, he would struggle to pick him for his selection. He hasn't played too many games. He started against Brighton. He started against Atletico Madrid. He's come off the bench in a number of games, but he is not playing enough for Thomas Tuchel to feel as though that it is the right time to calling up. Instead, of course, it is therefore his decision to call others up in the place of Miles Lewis-Skelly, which I understand is options at the moment, like Dan Burn on the left, Mark Guehi on the left. Jed Spence can, of course, play on the left as well. Nico O'Reilly, I believe, maybe also could play slightly off the left. So it makes sense that Lewis-Skelly isn't in that squad. But asked about that, and he said, kind of like, I think it was Nick Callow from Haters says he seems to work very well with younger players too, almost as mentor. Miles has been left out of the squad. Do you think that you or he will have, and he being Declan Rice actually, will have to have a word with Miles today just to reassure him? And he said, yes, for sure. I think we are here to support and help each other and to give a good perspective of the situation. And in the case of Miles, when you look at his age, what he's already done, he's just remarkable. So don't look at the one moment, what is happening for you, because maybe it happens for the right reason. And today you cannot see it. Miles is going to be gutted. Like, he is going to be gutted that he's not in that squad, because if you've been given something, if you've been exposed to something and all of a sudden it's taken away, like, I'll give you an example. In my job, for instance, I've been doing it for a few years, and then a situation where redundancy comes around and my job's at threat, suddenly you're like, wow, I might lose this amazing thing that I've got. And I imagine if that is kind of a similar scenario to this. The idea that you've just been exposed to a dream scenario of being with the England squad, being with that group, and then all of a sudden something happens, and now you're not doing that. I can only imagine it must be horrible. But the reality is, for Miles, he's 19 years old. He's still really young. He kind of got that opportunity at a very young age because of the situation at left back. Other players like Dan Burn, Jed Spence have been playing very well. And he still, for me, if I was to say start an England World Cup final tomorrow, I think he'd probably be my starting left back for England, because I genuinely don't see another option that's better than him right now for the squad. And yes, he needs to play more. Yes, he needs more minutes to justify that place. But he was excellent against Atletico Madrid. All Thomas Tuchel would need to do is to watch that game in particular, in my view, to see why Miles Lewis-Skelly has to be in the England squad and even in your potential starting 11. He was really good against Brighton. And for those examples, I just think that is really, really key to think about. I would be gutted if Miles doesn't make the World Cup squad for England this summer, because I think he deserves it based upon his work over not just this season, but particularly last season. He will get more minutes. He will get more opportunities. But I thought it was really interesting what Arteta said about kind of the idea that what is happening, maybe it happens for the right reason, and today you cannot see it. Maybe being left out of the squad means that other players play and they don't perform particularly well. And actually, Thomas Tuchel realises that England will struggle without a presence like Miles Lewis-Skelly at left back. So that, I think, is really, really, really important. So I'm looking forward to hopefully the change of that coming, and Miles is going to be fine. So that's the last thing I would say on the topic of the press conference, and particularly on the last thing. But we may have some questions for me in part 3. Of course, we're going to do a part 2 preview. But if you've got questions, get them at the ready, because we're going to have an opportunity for you to ask them. But first, I want to give you an opportunity to not miss out on what is by far the greatest, the most imperative, the most important way of protecting yourself while you're surfing the internet. And that is indeed NordVPN. But if you go to nordvpn.com/Gooner, you can go and get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or 2 year plan. There's extra additional potential discounts with it around being Black Friday 2 on the way. So don't miss out on those opportunities either. You do not want to miss out on this. So if you want to change your digital location on your mobile, on your tablet, on your laptop, there is only one format to be able to do that on, which is worth your time, worth your salt, worth your pennies, and that is Nord. So please do protect yourself while you're surfing the net, perhaps using a public Wi-Fi service, and perhaps you're traveling somewhere around the world. Next up for me is going to be Bruges in the Champions League. And to be able to watch the highlights of Arsenal's game against Bruges on TNT, on the YouTube, I'm going to have to change my geo-digital location, just like I did in Prague, to go back and watch the Arsenal highlights, which were initially location locked, but with the help of Nord, they no longer were. NordVPN.com/Gooner, link in the description as always. Right, let's go to part 2, your questions and more, right after this. Now, I did say part 2 in your questions and more, but I lied because it's the preview show. I'm not at the game today. I am working today. And as AFC Pulse says, hey, Tom, aren't you going Sunderland away? I'm not at the game today. It's a rarity that I'm not at the game today. The reason why I'm not at the game today is because the transport up to Sunderland is utterly and entirely screwed. There is no trains at all in a certain part of the line that you need to take to get up to Sunderland. There is just bus replacement services. So for those fans that are traveling up, of course, please do check your travel plans before heading up there. You probably would have left already. I imagine many of you, I imagine, are choosing to drive as well. So yeah, look, if you're heading up to Sunderland, good luck with your traveling. From a personal point of view, I just couldn't commit again after what happened to me last week with the Burnley situation, which obviously was a very spontaneous and horrible incident. But I having to make 6 or 7 changes, having to get potentially a bus replacement service, which could then prevent me from getting other connecting trains. It just made more sense for somebody who's very local to go to the game and for me to cover the game at home. So That's why I'm not there. But it's, as I say, it's a rarity. I'll be at the Spurs game, I'll be at the Bayern game, I'll be at the Chelsea game, I'll be at all the games that are coming up. But it's just this one game where the travel situation is bad to a point where it really does prevent me from going. So I'll be covering the game from the telly today, which is I don't get to do that, nor do I ever get to sit in my own home watching a game of Arsenal with an Arsenal shirt on these days. I can't remember the last time I watched an Arsenal game with an Arsenal shirt on, but I'm going to be sitting there with my Arsenal shirt on, watching the game, working the game, writing about the game, and giving my thoughts on the game. So I look forward to that. TF says you should take your new Tesla. I've definitely not got a Tesla, mate. So I don't know where you've got that from. But let's get into the lineup. Why is Gyökeres up front? I don't know why Gyökeres is up front. I'm going to change that quickly because that's not who I'm playing there. I think I've been so used to picking Gyökeres in the team. Ignore the fact he's going to still be the picture. But from that perspective, no, we're not going to have Gyökeres available. So let's get rid of that and bring that back in and go back on there. There we go. So ignore the fact that Gyökeres is the picture. He's there as a mascot. All right. So the team is as follows. For me, David Raya in goal, Jurriën Timber at right back, Saliba and Gabriel, the centre-back pairing, Calafiori at left back, Zubimendi in the 6 role, Rice as the left 8, Eze at the right 8 position, Saka on the right, Trossard on the left, and Mikel Marino up front. That is the team. That is the 11 that I am going for this game. I think it pretty much picks itself. So, yeah, I'm very much of the mood that this is the right choice. I did have a think about if I wanted to think about using Trossard as a centre forward and Eze on the left, and then maybe using Nwaneri at 10. That was another option I did think about because I'd quite like to see Eze move back to the left-hand side because I think he has struggled a bit as the 10, and I think he maybe needs to kind of like grow more. Tom says, what about the finishers? Well, Mikel Marino finished pretty darn well in Prague. Saka's been having plenty of opportunities, and Trossard as well has been stepping up with big goals, as has Eze, to be fair, in moments like the Crystal Palace game too. So we have plenty of finishers in this team. But in terms of who might finish the game, maybe you're discussing the substitutes, who might finish the game. Who are the finishers that we have? Well, Ethan Nwaneri stands out, of course, as maybe he's one of the only ones. Maybe it's a mystery injury returner. Who knows? Maybe there'll be an opportunity to see somebody return to the squad who's been injured, but we don't know as of yet. Andre Harriman Anusa, I imagine, will also be on the bench and offer something different to Mikel Marino in that centre-forward role. And Max Dowman will also be, we expect, on that bench as well to offer something from kind of an attacking midfield / kind of wide right position, if that is indeed what Arsenal want to do. And it's interesting, of course, as well that Saka's been kind of finishing some of these games on the left. You may have noticed that Saka's kind of moved to the left when Dowman's come off the bench at times and then moved to the right-hand side. So that's also something else to look out for. Scorelines, get your scoreline predictions into the chat. Curtis says 2-0, Eze man of the match. Mohammed says 4-0 to the Arsenal in this game. Curtis says 3 points today is definitely my only concern, and I do tend to agree. Abdul Hakim says a Marino hat-trick incoming in a 4-0 win. Young Gunner says 2-1 win to the Arsenal. Claire says 1-0 to Arsenal. Xhaka own goal. We haven't really discussed Xhaka at all today, but he is, of course, reuniting with the Arsenal team since the first time competitively since he left. Barry, 2-0 Arsenal. George says 3-0. Maximia says 2-0. Tom says a tight 1-0 win. They'll go to a back 5. Blackshine says 2-0. Arasuki says 1-0 to the Arsenal. Ramsey says 1-0 Arsenal. Timber, Natalie says 2-0. Loga says 2, obviously, to 0. Matt G says 1-0 Marino. Temi says 2-0 defeat. Ballard, monster header, and a Xhaka boom, and a late Raya red card. The reverse psychology of Temi in the house this morning. John says 1-1. Nick says 2-0. Maximius says 2-0 as well with a Xhaka red card. Zoom says 1-0 to the Arsenal. Jelly Belly says 6-0. And Barry says Saka on the verge of a good run. A 3-1 win today. I'll continue to put some of these score lines up. Like Ellie who says 1-0 and Tom who says 2-0 as we go to part 3. Your questions and more right after this. Seems a lot of you, more of you, in fact, than I thought, going more so with kind of some draws and some lesser kind of impressive results. Is Be curious to get your reasons as to why. Is it just a simple case you've been very impressed with Sunderland? Is it something to do with Arsenal, their lack of talent at the moment? I say lack of talent. There's loads of talent still there, but you know what I mean. The missing talent that is unavailable for Arsenal right now because of the injuries that we've suffered. What is it that's making you particularly fearful about this game overall? Is it the presence of Granit Xhaka that is proven to be kind of so clear in your minds about what the challenge will be for this game? If you want to know Arsenal's kind of head-to-head record with Sunderland, it does stand in very good favour for Arsenal. Arsenal have won, just having a quick, they've won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've won 5 of the last 6. They've won 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 8 of the last 10, 8 of the last 11, no, 8 of the last 10 meetings Arsenal have won between the two sides going back to February of 2013. The last time the sides met was in 2021. Arsenal won 5-1 in the League Cup. And in May of 2017, they won 2-0 at the Emirates. And in October of 2016, they won 4-1 at the Stadium of Light. The last time they failed to win was back in April 2016, where they drew 0-0 at the Stadium of Light instead. But in that 4-1 victory back in 2016, for those that are interested, Alexis Sanchez scored twice and Olivier Giroud scored twice as well. Jermaine Defoe scored a penalty in that game. It was 1-0 to Arsenal in the 19th minute. Jermaine Defoe equalised in the 65th, and then Arsenal scored 3 goals in 7 minutes. 2 Giroud, 1 from Alexis, to give them the win on the day in the Northeast. So, yeah, we're going to go now into the chat box and get some of your questions, some of your thoughts, some of your feelings. And Sir Nicholas thinks that Xhaka is going to be on his A game. Ronald's pointing out that Sunderland have the second best defence in the league. Who is number 1? If you don't know the answer to that, I don't know where you've been all season. OJ says, hi, Tom. Who is your Premier League manager and team of the month of October? Well, Arsenal have won all of their games and they haven't conceded a single goal. So it's going to be Arsenal and Arteta. But I know that Ruben Amorim has already been awarded the Manager of the Month award for October. He did beat Liverpool, to be fair. I guess that's something, but a lot of teams did. So make of that what you will. I think if you win all your games and don't concede any goals, you probably deserve to win the Manager and the Team of the Month award. Abdullah Keem says, do you think Gabriel Jesus could be back in time for that Carabao Cup game against Palace? I would be very optimistic now. If he's already back in training in November, and he's training with the team, he's on the ball, he's doing full training, then yeah, I would be pretty hopeful of being available for that Palace game, as I would be with other players that are currently out. Young Gunner says, Tom, can you please sing the Pierre Hincapié chant? No, because I don't sing. Paul says, Sunderland don't concede much and have a good record for coming back after conceding a goal as well. Manali Cream says that it's because we have a depleted squad and Sunderland are a decent outfit. And Claire says the Stadium of Light will definitely be bouncing at the champions-elect in town. And Sir Nicholas asks, why is it called the Stadium of Light? That's a pretty awesome name for a stadium. Well, let's ask the only person who might know, which is Google. Why is the Stadium of Light called so? It says the Stadium of Light is named in honour of the Sunderland region's history with coal mining. The name is a symbolic reference to the Davy lamps that miners carried, which provided a source of light and hope in dark mines. A monument of a Davy lamp stands at the stadium's entrance to represent the industrial heritage and workers who emerged from the mines. So there you go. I hope that gives you a pretty nice story, I think, to name a stadium as such, and a nice testament to those, of course, that worked there. John says, we have been burnt and can see at some point us conceding and possibly losing. No one wants it to be true, but we all know at some point it will happen. Tizer says, is it easier for you to write about a game that's on the telly or better for you to be in the ground? It's easier for me to write about it in the ground. I would say there are more pros to me being there than not there, but I will say that having the commentary does help in many ways, because if I'm looking at my screen typing, I can still hear what's being said in the background. So yeah, sometimes I watch the games without commentary, without any noise if I'm working. Sometimes I find it too distracting, but I think I'm going to be still very busy today. Raj says, did you read the Sky article on Hincapié? He has the highest dual success. I think it was Nick Bright's piece, was it not? I think Nick did an excellent job, and I did start reading it, and then I think I got distracted. But yes, the little bit I wrote at the beginning, I read at the beginning, was very good. So Nick did a good job, and I'm sure the rest of it was great. I need to go and finish the rest of it. But he said his old coach claimed that he broke the GPS records according to a former coach of his. Very impressive indeed. He does move about the pitch rather impressively. Yatunde says, absence of Gyökeres is my fear. I find it difficult to get out of the high press. Adnay says, what's your thoughts on Boadi from Lille, considering he's been mentioned by a hand of Arsenal? Can't say that I've watched much of him. I know that Arsenal have got a lot of scouting going on in France at the moment. Monaco's Aliouche is another one that I think Arsenal, to my knowledge, are also looking and have looked at. So it doesn't surprise me that they're looking kind of at particularly midfielders at the moment and youngsters in France. It seems the scouting network's kind of gone a little bit harder into that particular nation of late, is my understanding. Tom says, do you prefer a loss to City or Liverpool on Sunday? Which do you see as the biggest challenger to us and why? It's a good question, and it probably segues quite nicely into rounding up all of today's and tomorrow's Premier League action. I prefer a draw, obviously. I think if one team was to win, I'd probably rather Liverpool won this game. I do see City as a greater threat at the moment than them. Liverpool look like they've got a fair few more problems, but obviously I would prefer a draw in this particular game. But yes, this weekend's action, 12:30 kickoff, Spurs, Man United, the Premier League's losers facing one another this afternoon or this lunchtime. Everton then in the first of a load of 3 o'clock kickoffs, or just two in fact, take on Fulham. West Ham host Burnley, and then it's Sunderland against Arsenal at 5:30. Tomorrow's games are we've got one more evening game tonight, Chelsea Wolves, 8 o'clock UK time. And then tomorrow's games, Crystal Palace against Brighton is a 2 o'clock kickoff, as is Aston Villa Bournemouth, as is Brentford Newcastle, as is Nottingham Forest Leeds. And then the 4:30 kickoff, of course it is Manchester City against Liverpool. I should also point out that in yesterday's press conference, there was also a further question about the change in the fixture for the Palace game, and in particular the Everton game. So Arteta was asked, as things stand right now, that is the way that things are going in terms of kind of the 48 hours, if you like, between the two games, Everton and Palace. And he said, hopefully not, very hopefully not. But he said, I think it was Ian Abraham said, are you pleading with common sense to kick in from the people that do the fixtures? And he said, well, and this, by the way, I think is a really good answer. And I probably should have read it more so in part one, but I'm reading it now. Well, I'm super optimistic that this is not going to be the case, because from every angle, from the Premier League, from the EFL, from UEFA, all the time, the only thing that we talk about is the welfare of the players and the supporters. And if we want to maintain that principle, that cannot be the case, and we cannot play Sunday and Tuesday. So we have very positive talks to the club and to the Premier League, and hopefully we'll find a way to help as much as possible, because sometimes you cannot help 200 people out there and they have an issue. But for some reason, you cannot say, if I can help 100, I'm not going to do it, because what about the other 100? No. You help the 100. If you can help 100 and the other 100 next time, you have the opportunity to do it as well. I think we need to be very thorough and cannot allow ourselves to be put in that situation. So there's a lot of numbers there, and he used the word 100 a lot. But what he means is, say that Arsenal is 100 and Palace is 100. He's saying there, if you cannot help both of them, then make sure you help at least one of them. Help the player welfare of one of those teams. Help that 100, even if you can't help the other 100. And next time, if you can help the other 100, then great. But you shouldn't just choose to not help both, because then you're helping one over the other. And I do agree with him. And if the shoe was on the other foot, I would also agree with him. I think that from this perspective, you need to help as much as you can when it comes to player welfare. And Arsenal's game against Everton can be moved. They can move that game. Arsenal's game against Everton can be moved. Now, an exclusive story by my colleague Ryan Taylor yesterday, he reported that UEFA have rejected the proposal to move Palace's game to the Wednesday. Palace are set to play in the UEFA Conference League in the Thursday before that weekend that they play Leeds, which is the weekend before that they play Arsenal in the League Cup quarter-final. So because UEFA have rejected the moving of the fixture, the reason why they've rejected this mainly is because it is the last round of games in the UEFA Conference League. So those games on that Thursday are all taking place, are all happening at the same time, so that there is that extra level of jeopardy about who is and who isn't going to qualify in those kind of like different stage of the competition. UEFA have been idiots, in my opinion, to not move this fixture. The jeopardy element should not come before player welfare. There's no Champions League games on that week. UEFA should have moved that game, is my personal, honest opinion. They should have moved that game. It's idiotic to not move that game to benefit the clubs, the players, so that they can better fixture schedule other games that are going on. It's a superiority complex for me that needs absolutely to have a second look, and they need to reconsider that decision because it's mad that they're not moving it. They need to move that game to the Wednesday so Palace can then move the Leeds game to the Saturday and they can have that 3-day gap between fixtures. And then Arsenal is kind of irrelevant for Arsenal, but Arsenal should have that game against Everton moved regardless of what happens with Palace. That game should move. Now, I've already booked my travel to Everton on the Sunday, so that travel would need to be rebooked. So I'm in the group of kind of people that, of course, have their travel plans affected by that game moving, and people rightfully point out that it sucks for fans, and it does suck for fans, and I empathize with fans who are going to have to rebook hotels and travel if they've already booked it, and that's awful. But the priority, it will be player welfare first, and then a very small group of fans travel plan second. That has to be the order for me. You might say that's not fair. You might say that's inconsiderate. But for me, the broader context of like, if you can reduce the potential injury of Arsenal players, and as a result, it means that a small group of fans are slightly out of pocket or can be reimbursed. Maybe the club can reimburse them. That I think would be a very smart thing for them to do. If they're very much pushing for this game to be moved, I personally feel as though those fans, if they can't claim back or they can't get those kind of travel plans or hotels refunded, the club absolutely should refund that as a kind of a gesture of goodwill. These fans are going up to support the team. It's my opinion. They should be refunded. It would look really good for the club to do that. The club could afford it. Let's be honest about it. So absolutely the club should reimburse those fans that if they need to change their travel plans and can't get those tickets, hotel plans refunded. I hope that the club do what they can to help to change that. But it's very, very difficult. Yeah, that's kind of the situation where we're at with the Palace Everton UEFA scenario. Let's go to Ocean says, I prefer a draw because a win would just give them momentum. And I think City is more of a challenge to us because of what we have forced in some of the past seasons, especially with the City tailing as well. So, as I say, a draw would obviously be what we prefer. But of the two, I think I prefer a Liverpool win over City. I guess the fear is, of course, it would build up momentum in either of those two teams. But yeah, a draw would be ideal. Yeah, I'm not 12 years old. I'm not going to fall for that. Benny says, look at the players out, mostly the strikers and wingers. I expect us to be stingy in defence. Maybe our goal scoring is impacted, but not our defence. Omar says, hey, Tom, what are your thoughts on Ramsdale leaving Arsenal for first team football, only to play back up to England's second choice? Yeah, I mean, it's not the greatest of looks, is it, for Ramsdale? He obviously wants to play. He obviously wanted to also be playing in the Premier League, but he's made that move to Newcastle. We don't know the ins and outs of what was going on behind the scenes. Maybe it was his only option. I don't know. But if, say, he did turn down the opportunity to play for a club further down the table and start for them in goal, maybe that's probably what he should have done. Maybe Bournemouth could have been a club that he might have looked at. They signed Petrovic from Chelsea. Could they have signed Ramsdale instead? I don't know. Michael said, do you think Gabriel Jesus could be on the bench today? I don't think so. I'd be utterly shocked if Gabriel Jesus is on the bench, but who knows? Never say never, but yeah. Young Gunner says, Tom, just wondering why you have two channels you post on Spotify. I have two channels? I thought I only had one channel on Spotify. The Gooner Talk. There is two. Why is there two? That's weird. I don't know. Thanks for highlighting that, though. I'm not doing that on purpose. I don't know why there's two there. That seems strange. I'll chase that up. But thank you for bringing it to my attention. I don't know why there's two. There should only be one. Strange. How very strange. Don't know. Thanks for bringing that to my attention, though. Alex says, surely we already know who travelled from our team. We might do. Sometimes it gets linked. Jay says, what's your thoughts on traitors? No spoilers, Jay. No spoilers. I think you have a week. I think a week is a fair amount of time. Some people will be waiting to the weekend to watch it. So I'm not spoiling anything. Okay. And if you're a watcher of that, don't look at the chat box because someone will probably try and spoil it for you. I'm not spoiling it. It was great, but I'm not spoiling it. No spoilers from me till next week. Natalie says City 6 points and Liverpool 7 points after Arsenal not drawing. It's best for Liverpool to win. Sorry, my English. Don't worry, Natalie. I think you got your point across. See, Tom says no spoilers. I'm watching it tonight. Exactly. Don't spoil things for people. It's just mean. I know you will get banned if you drop spoilers into a chat box. Just a heads up. But we block people for being abusive, for trolling, and for spoilers. They are the rules of the chat box. So don't breach those rules of the chat because it will be the end of your time with us. Eddie says, Tom, did you ever get an answer from Arteta from a tactical point of view when you asked about the ex-players bringing compared to the others, that he is an exceptional player, gives a lot of options? What ex-player brings compared to others rather than him being an exceptional player? I mean, he kind of didn't really give a tactical answer to it. Let me see if I find it again and I'll read the answer one more time. Victor. He said he's very unpredictable, full of energy, super competitive, a player that comes from a context of difficulty. So he's got a level of hunger and desire that's going to bring the team. It's going to be amazing. And I think he's going to add something extra to the team that we don't have and make sure that very soon we see him on the pitch. So I guess he's not going to turn around and say he gives us this element from the left and he moves inside and he's got he's more diminutive and smaller and he's more technically, he's not going to maybe go into that detail. But, I like the answer about the hunger and desire. I think that's a really important aspect, of course, as well. Mason says, what specific changes to the VAR protocol would most increase transparency and speed, such as live audio communication and a time limit for reviews? Time limits are not always going to be working because sometimes the technology is slow. So we can't necessarily put a time limit on it. I guess maybe you can put a time limit on it in terms of the decision-making process when it is live. That could potentially be something. I think I'd prefer a challenge system. Maybe a challenge system would be better. If managers feel as though they've been really aggrieved, they get a certain number of challenges in a game, and that's when VAR gets involved. So maybe that's the way of doing it, but that could slow the game down even further because managers would want to see an opportunity to see a replay before, of course, they can challenge something. So yeah, it's very difficult. Young Gunner says, Tom, I know you don't always ask Arteta what you tell us to ask him, but I need to know his hair routine. I'm 16 and already have a receding hairline. Well, there's many ways you can tackle that these days, mate. There's plenty of places you can go to tackle that. Neon Gooner says, has anyone tried out FM 2026 yet? Any thoughts? I've not played it myself. I'm not an FM player. I have been playing FIFA this year for the first time in a few years, and I am really enjoying it. So for the first time in a long time, I've actually played FIFA and enjoyed it. And by FIFA, I mean EAFC. Obviously, it's not called FIFA anymore, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I've obviously got a Red Bull Salzburg team, and I'm gradually evolving it, and that's the team that I use. When I play games, I basically put extra restrictions on the games that I play, like a Nuzlocke type situation. So the rules that I've put on myself for FIFA this year is that I can only use players other than for specific objectives that require players that are not available for it. That's the only kind of extra bit I have. And that's only to complete objectives and nothing else, is to only use players that play for Red Bull Salzburg. And my team's pretty good. Pretty much every player is now gold. Pretty much every player is, there's a lot of over 80s and stuff as well that I've evolved them to. So I'm very happy with how my Ultimate Team journey is going at the moment. Sue says, did you see what Ox said about Wenger and Arteta? No, not yet. I've still yet to get to that bit. I've listened to the first hour. I've still got the bit at the end to listen to where he talks about Wenger and Arteta. So I'm still getting to that. So yeah, looking forward to getting to that bit because I'm curious to see what he says. But I heard what he said about Thierry, and I thought it was very interesting. This idea, and Hendo and Milner as well. The idea that maybe that Arsenal team didn't have that nastiness, and that's what stopped them from kind of beating particularly big sides. And I'd be curious to know what Arteta's thoughts on whether we have that nastiness now. That would be very interesting to know if that's what he thinks and if we have that ability to now be a bit nasty, and having nastiness is an important trait to win games. John says, Tom, do you have any superstitions when it comes to Arsenal playing? Not really. I often do my best to try and go and visit Vinny's plaque before most home games. I always do at the start of the season. Before every season starts, I always make sure I go over in the first game, definitely. And usually if there's a really, really, really big game, and even if I'm in a rush, sometimes in a rush, so I can't go. But if it's a really big game, I'll absolutely be factoring it into my schedule to make sure I go and touch that plaque. So yeah, a few things, but not really any rituals necessarily. So yeah. And Granddaddy Gooner says, I prefer the non-celebrity version of the traitors since they are all actors and celebrities. I can't get away from the thing that it's all staged. It's definitely not staged, but certainly the fact that they know each other, I think, makes it a different dynamic. I said before that I think they should do a series of traitors where we, the viewers, don't know who the traitors are either. And it should be like the traitors are picked, and then of course the show is done, and then you don't know who the traitor is. You can have in a way you're playing along. And then at the end, you won't know if there's still a traitor left. I think that would be pretty cool. Just do a version of the show where we don't know anything about who is and who isn't the traitors. I think that would be a cool version of doing the show. I think that's what I would like to see happen. Izzy says, over 1,000 watching and only 200 odd likes. Come on, people, fix up. Yeah, if you want to drop a like on the video, please do. And subscribe. I'll be with you tomorrow morning, bright and early, to break down everything that happens in today's game against Sunderland. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm very keen to see if Arsenal can manage to grab yet another victory. Just remember, if Arsenal keep a clean sheet today and win, it will be a record. 9 clean sheet victories in a row. Don't think that's ever been done before across all competitions. So obviously Man United got the most in the Premier League in a row, 14, but obviously they conceded goals in other competitions within that run. Arsenal could get a 9th straight, a 9th straight clean sheet victory, and in all competitions, which would be, I think, a record for an English top flight club. So that is one to look out for today. And it would be Arsenal's 11th win in a row, I think, as well, if they were to also win it. So plenty of interesting narratives from this game. Fingers crossed Arsenal can get the result. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Arsenal victory with goals from Bukayo Saka and Mikel Merino. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. I'll be back, as I say, tomorrow morning with you bright and early, 8 a.m, to round up all of the latest from that fixture and hopefully be discussing a victory. So join me tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.